Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. What in the heck is going on with all these tariffs, and what does it mean for M&A? Well, we're going to unpack that with one of our industry's great minds on this topic. With me today, I've got Jonathon Todd, Vice Chair of the Transportation Logistics Practice at the Benish Law Firm. Jonathon, welcome to the Hot Seat.
Thanks, Spencer.
Before we heat things up, sir, I want you to take 20 to 30 seconds to tell us about a little bit about the work that you're doing there at Benish.
Yeah. So I've always been a supply chain guy. I've got a graduate degree in supply chain management. I've got a customs broker license. Used to work for a forwarder and customs broker, and I typically do regulatory and transactional work. So in this environment, questions about tariffs are much more hot than questions about DQF and FMCSRs and all of that good transpo stuff. So it's been a busy time. We know the space well. We can provide good practical advice. We're getting questions from everybody, from transportation providers and certainly from importers and even those who use import goods. It's a wild time, and everyone's doing the best they can, and we're here to help.
All right. Well, let's jump right in right there. So how would you describe the current state of the current tariff environment?
Yeah, so it's a game in play for sure. One of the themes that I hear on these conversations I'm having every single day is that there's almost no strategy right now, and I mean that from a U.S. company's perspective. Strategic planning is kind of on hold for almost everyone, and everything has become as tactical as it could possibly get. I mean, I've talked with companies who, when the reciprocal tariffs rolled out on April 2nd, literally saw bankruptcy knocking on the door because their investments are gone, their cost balance is gone. I mean, it was really incredible for a lot of companies. And if you think about just one simple example, think about the automotive industry. I mean, I know a lot of folks in the transportation business service that industry, a whole lot of other folks making parts, et cetera, for that industry. This is an industry that went from, oh no, we have tariffs on everything from Canada and Mexico, to, oh great, there's a USMCA carve out, to, oh no, we have tariffs on automotives now, to, oh great, there's not stacking on the tariffs on automotives. So it's been so iterative for them that I've literally had conversations with importers who say, I was sharpening my pencils on building facilities in the US, and now I'm on hold because we've got this pause until July 9. I got to see what's happening. But that's the long and short of it. Everything is tactical now. Everything is tactical, and everybody's watching every dollar and every cent.
So you mentioned the folks that have exposure to the auto industry. What about others? What other industries do you see having to adapt heavily to the current environment?
Yeah, so consumer products are kind of on the front line of this, that there are so many consumer products that come from China. And now, of course, we have 145% kind of plus tariffs on imports from China. That's been really difficult for a lot of the consumer products manufacturers, the retail industry, those sort of segments. Also, anyone who handles steel and aluminum, kind of core industrial parts, there were exceptions. That this issue has been around since the Trump 45 administration, and many of them were playing under some exceptions that existed. And what happened in Q1 of this year was that those exceptions went away. And so the cost burden for a lot of those companies really ramped up overnight. But it's really across the board. The other thing that people forget is, even if a shipper is not the importer themselves, so much product is from overseas that you're going to pay for it one way or another. So folks that are reliant on buying from distributors who move in product to the U.S., they still have a higher cost burden. And this has kind of been my theme for everyone since December of last year, because if you remember Thanksgiving week last year, that was a wild week for me. The president announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico, maybe. And I thought, we've got this USMCA thing we negotiated. This is wild. So from that point forward, I was telling everyone, prepare for a higher cost operating environment. And today that's true for almost every industry, although some are on the front line. And that'll have impacts for transportation, operators and service providers as well.
So you said something in your prior response about not having a strategy. So functionally, how does that look when owners are in such a state of paralysis? They don't have a plan, they don't have anything. So like what are they actually doing or not doing right now in response to some of this? I think I've heard this kind of design disruption, with the tariffs.
Yeah, right now it's about keeping the lights on. And so a lot of the shippers are renegotiating purchase agreements with their foreign manufacturers and foreign suppliers. A lot of them are also renegotiating with customers, trying to find some way to manage through this. I mean, if we can't buy and sell goods in America, nobody's doing any business. So it's about finding a path forward. There's belt tightening with service providers. That's absolutely happening. That impacts, every trucking operation. And then, longer term, once we know where this is headed, it's, business does what business does, and we have a great business environment in this country. People will find a path forward. They'll find what they need to do. There are folks looking at reshoring or moving more production to Canada and Mexico if that remains favorable, which is interesting from a transport perspective because that could impact things like lanes and specific services that folks need. I'm having a lot of conversations with folks both on the provider side and the shipper side about bonded warehousing, for example. What's old is new again. Bonded warehousing has been around forever, and all of a sudden shippers woke up and learned about it and they're interested in it. So those are hot services right now. So there are opportunities. It's not like there's nothing to be done, but in terms of long-term CapEx spend and long-term planning and investment by shippers and for that matter carriers, it's a difficult environment, and you don't want to have a misstep. I'll give you one example of that. I know a shipper that moved production from Mexico to Vietnam, and it made sense. And they did this over 3 years. They spent millions of dollars to do it. This was in response to the prior round of tariffs. And when Liberation Day happened on April 2nd, Vietnam ended up with a 46% tariff. So you had investment over years, millions of dollars of investment, and overnight there's a 46% tariff on imports from Vietnam, which was your whole strategic plan. And that'll get you emotional if you're on the business owner side of that, right? Yeah. Thankfully, we had a pause, and Vietnam has a 10% tariff today, that the reciprocal tariffs, but that's an example of the degree of distress that there really has been on the shipper side of this now. And if you're servicing a company like that as a transportation provider, they're not thinking of their transpo spend, because they're thinking, maybe I have to wind down. How do I survive this moment? So that's a real challenge for everyone. But right now, we're in this pause. We've got about 2 months of pause left. There'll be announcements this week. Apparently, there's a UK announcement coming up, and a meeting with China. So I don't know anyone that's super optimistic that the freight recession is indeed over. But I think people are a lot more optimistic that we'll see our way out of this tariff environment, and that's good for everyone.
No, I think that's, and I'm curious because obviously you kind of have a variety of different access points into this, this pain in the marketplace. Who are the potential winners on the other side of this disruption in the ecosystem of transportation logistics?
Yeah. Well, one that comes top of mind are those that haul for the steel industry and heavy manufacturing. I mean, I've talked with some folks on the steel side of the business, on the flatbed side of the business, and some of them are pretty optimistic about where this is going. So there will be some winners, and those that have super niche services, those that are bonded carriers, those that can run cross border across North America, those that have bonded warehouse facilities, like I said, those are hyper valuable services now. And, this is all speculation, but if we think that in the future, maybe there will still be some level of baseline reciprocal tariff, right? Because that aligns with an America First trade policy, aligns with the president's vision of reshoring. those who can service shippers in that environment, will be the winners. And that may mean, a more North America centric environment, maybe a more domestic movement environment. Because if we're not bringing in finished goods to ports and then draying and going to a DC and distributing, then we got to move, raw materials and inputs here in the U.S. and that could be good for a lot of people. But it's going to take some time. But near term, I've met some folks on all sides of the steel business that are pretty optimistic right now, and it's good to see some optimism, right?
Yeah,
good to see some of it.
And I think there's probably a lot of folks that, in principle, agree with some of these policies, but maybe didn't anticipate how they would directly be affected by them and so quickly.
That's why I say to people, right? Who can argue against bringing back a manufacturing base to America? There's no one. There's no one who can argue against that. The question is, how do we get there? What's the timeline? The president has used the word pain before. What does that pain look like? That's the question. That's what everyone's struggling with right now. And that's kind of TBD, but we're all doing the best we can.
Well, it's good theater. Not fun if you're involved in it, but it sure is interesting from my vantage point. Why don't we transition a little bit to the M&A side of this? Because obviously our firms have worked together on a variety of deals. You guys got great team members that support business owners on the M&A side. How are you seeing these tariffs affect M&A?
Yeah, so for deals generally, there is a lot more focus, and this makes perfect sense, a lot more focus on trade compliance, focus on, like, let's suppose that someone's buying a shipper that imports goods. Are they compliant or not? Is there something in the closet we got to watch out for? There's a 5-year statute of limitations on customs enforcement. Will a buyer get bitten by something down the road? And a lot of those conversations on all sides turn to the quant side of the analysis, right? We lawyers, we sharpen our pencils and we get in, we try and find, something that's wrong. Or if we're on the sales side, hey, look, the company is great and they're responsible. I can tell you why. But a lot of these questions lead to, will there be a customer base if the domestic market's not as elastic as we think it is? If tariffs go up dramatically, can there still be the shipping that we thought there would be at the volumes that we thought there would be? Can the company really handle that in its financials? Then since it's so different from the past, those questions are for, buyers and those with the capital. I will say I've seen a number of deals that slowed or put on pause this spring because capital is cautious at this point in time because no one knows what business environment we're going into. On the other hand, the transpo M&A world has been less rock and roll, in the last few years than it was a few years before. But strategics are still out there. There are a lot of strategics in the market that are still doing some good business and growing good businesses through acquisition. And that's positive to see. The quant issues remain. Will a target's customer base survive this moment? Will they still be buying in the same volumes at the same rates that they did before? Are the lanes still relevant? Are the services still relevant? But there's still opportunity for those, especially those with tight relationships and super niche plays that are valuable in this market.
Yeah, I mean, and I would echo that. I mean, even through all of the trade publications that you and I regularly contribute to, we're still seeing pretty frequent announcements around M&A.
Right.
And
it's rare.
And I think that's where there might be some confusion. I think some people might think this is a pencils down moment, and that's not really what we're seeing. I see major shifts in the way folks are approaching diligence. And I think you made a great point based on where they're putting their energy and where they see additional exposure in this environment. And 100%, it's that customer. And,
right.
Will they continue to spend in the way they have in the past within these conditions? And I see a tremendous amount of effort. And I've seen deals where, what was discovered through that additional diligence, created more risk and ultimately some, a withdrawal from a deal. But I've also seen folks scope that diligence very effectively and get comfortable because, like, hey, there's no need for us to jump to conclusions. Let's what's true, and let's find out what is the real exposure, and if there are risks, maybe we can structure around it. But let's not jump to conclusions. I have been shocked by how much patience has been at the table over the last 90 days while we've kind of been navigating through this. It's really interesting. And I think it kind of just points to, and again, this is my question, like, to what degree is that influenced by all of this pent up inventory of companies that wanted and needed to transition ownership over the last 2 years? It just was not a very ideal environment. But at some point, you got to move, and buyers have to go put capital to work. So, like, to what degree is just what happened 24 months ago influencing what's happening right now, irrespective of what's, how the tariffs are affecting that M&A motivating factors?
Yeah, it's fair to say that there's a lot more realism these days than there were in some years past. And that goes both ways. That's buyers being pragmatic about what they're looking at, and not being so eager to buy into smoke and mirrors, but also not being bored at things that don't have smoke and mirrors because they're good quality companies. And on the sales side, being pragmatic and realistic also. I mean, if you got a good company, you've got a good company, you've got a good track record. And just because these aren't the rock and roll days of, making money hand over fist, that doesn't mean that you still don't have a good company. It doesn't mean you don't have value today. It doesn't mean you can't preserve that legacy going forward by having a deal with the right suitor. So I think there's a lot of realism on all sides, and also a lot of patience. I've seen that also, where folks, it used to be, we've got to get this deal done. This is super urgent. Let's throw teams around it. I mean, we lawyers will move as fast as anyone needs us to move, but I also like being reasonable. And, there are folks who are taking their time. This isn't super urgent. We want to make sure it's right, for the selling family, right for the buyer, good to integrate. And that's positive. And, I get questions sometimes about, like, well, what do you do? And my favorite go-to line in this type of environment is, like, this is classic sales and ops management. Like, you want to run a business right here, right now, whether you're selling, the back half of this year, next year, or 10 years down the road, run a good business, right? That's the answer to everything. I mean, some people got lottery tickets some of these years recently, and, maybe that was deserved, maybe it wasn't, but, if you got a good business, you got a good business. So that classic sales and ops management, and you'll be good for it when it comes time to sell.
I think that's a great point. And I think some people, we've seen this in a variety of different freight cycles, where if you can demonstrate that you are unique and differentiated from the rest of the pack based on how you perform during a difficult period, ultimately it can produce all kinds of fruit from a valuation standpoint later down the road. Because in good times, how can any buyer fully appreciate who you are when you're getting the benefit of the tailwinds of all of these other factors that can kind of cloud, your performance? And so I think, not that people are, I don't know if anybody really wants to hear that, Todd, but I do think that there's opportunities for folks that are looking at an exit next 1 to 2 years. This is a great way to showcase what you're about. So, like, making sure that your sales and your ops teams are responding and meeting the moment. I think that's a great opportunity to secure a very competitive valuation down the road.
Right.
So, I kind of want to just break it down to advice, because there's so much disruption. Everybody has different exposure. What is the advice that you find yourself giving most to transportation owners at this particular time?
Yeah, it comes down to some basic things. One is, we are in a higher operating cost environment. I mean, it's going to hit us one way or the other, either on the customer side or on our own operational side. So watching costs is important in this environment. Not playing games is important in this environment. This is human nature. People have a tendency, if they get scared about something or get into a belt tightening mode, they cut somewhere, and maybe they cut in the wrong place. But it's time to responsibly watch costs. The other thing that I think is more fun in terms of the conversation is it's time to be consultative, right? I mean, a lot of the shippers are going through things that they have some familiarity with. This is in some ways reminiscent of 2020 and COVID. It's in some ways reminiscent of what some went through in 2018 with the Trump 45 tariffs. But they still need folks who know what they're doing and who can provide solutions. And it's high time, I think, for the transportation industry to own its consultative nature. I mean, we're problem solvers, right? We deliver a service that gets stuff done. It's high time to be consultative with customers and help them think through things and comparing notes with them. And even, I mean, it could just be as simple as commiseration. But I mean, these are difficult times. You know it, they know it. You know, it can help to be there, to be a sounding board, to help them think through what they're doing and where things are headed. And that's, I think, you know, as key to good sales and ops management, as key to watching your costs, because then you're more than just a commodity. You know, that's what none of us want to fall into, is just being that simple commodity that's easy to change. If we can build on those relationships and provide the expertise, which we have, and in some of these, you know, family-owned companies on, you know, multi-generation, like you have 100 years of experience, you know, behind you. You've seen everything, and it's really time to bring that to bear, and that also makes you shine. That's not just salesmanship. That's being a good person, and that's making your company shine.
No, I think that's a good word. What advice would you give to the person that has attempted to do that, but maybe they're not feeling that ship or lean in and trying to collaborate or be receptive, you know, to that consultation? What advice would you give to that transportation business owner?
So speed is helpful. I mean, shippers want to hear things immediately. Things are moving so quickly that they need to know, you know, what we're seeing kind of in real time. And you know, any other type of connectivity is helpful. I tell you, I've been to, you know, a number of even local, you know, transportation oriented events around the country this spring, and people are eager to talk. They want to talk about this. They want to feel it out. They want to compare notes and understand what everybody's going through and what opportunities people see as existing. So I think it's kind of as simple as, you know, getting out there, putting yourself out there, being first to speak. There's no, I mean, this is the kind of thing where we're all going into it together, right? This isn't the kind of thing where someone's experience is inadequate, because we're all experienced at this, and it's all happening to us at the same time. I think there should be no fear in just getting out there and having those conversations. And what I found is that people appreciate it. People really do appreciate it. Even just having the conversation, having a sounding board. You know, this is what I'm going through. What are you going through? That's really valuable in times like this. And when you have that transportation service to sell, that also shows that you're acceptable. I'm sorry, you're accessible. You get it. You get what's going on, and you can provide solutions for them. That's everything that we do as service providers. Without that, we don't exist.
That's a good word there. All right. So finally, one last question for you, Jonathan. A little bit of a wild card here. So you're based out of Cleveland, and I'm curious. So Benish, is y'all are having a team meeting. You're gonna try to wow some clients this upcoming year, get some season tickets. You got three options. You've got the Browns, you've got the Cavs, and you've got the Guardians or the Indians. I'm not sure what they call them these days, but one of those three, what's the best bang for your buck?
Best bang for your buck right now is a Cavs game. We're in the thick of it now. But historically, I'm a baseball guy. I grew up in rural Missouri outside St. Louis, and watched the Cardinals growing up. I'm a big Cardinals fan. I moved to Cleveland 10 years ago. I thought I would never see October baseball again because I'm moving to the town with the Indians. That's not going to happen. And of course, we saw World Series play in 2016. Unfortunately, we lost. Unfortunately, we lost to the Cubs, which are the mortal enemies of the Cardinals. But the Guardians now they're called the Guardians. That's a good team as well. But Cavs are top of mind for folks at this moment.
Not a bad time for sports in Cleveland. We'll see what happens with the Browns. But hey, Jonathan, I want to just thank you for sharing your insights and kind of your vantage point in this very confusing time in our industry. I know that our audience is going to be much appreciative for it. So we're going to leave it right there with you. That's going to do it for us in the hot seat. We will see you next time.